My name is Jason JROCK Houston, and you guys are listening to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. It's my great pleasure to be speaking with lead singer Evan Rodaniche from the band Cage9. How you doing tonight, Evan?
Very good, man. Very good. That was a heroic attempt at my last name.
So how do we pronounce that? How do we actually pronounce it?
Oh, Rodaniche, but you could just call me
Rodaniche. Okay. Now I was curious because I understand that the band was originally formed in Panama, and you don't sound like you have a real heavy accent. So I was curious, were you born and raised there? Or?
Yeah, sure was. Let me see how to explain. Panama was kind of I kind of grew up around the Canal Zone, which was run by the U.S. West Panama Canal, owned by the U.S. So there was quite a bit of an American community down there, and so I kind of grew up around that. My dad was Panamanian, my mom's American, so I'm kind of like a mix, I guess you could say. But
that's interesting.
I grew up speaking Spanish, but English also, and I went to like American schools and stuff. So that explains that.
And so, like, coming from a mixed background, I guess that explains the speaking Spanish and the fact that you're from Panama. But did you learn Spanish just from being in that country? You know, because obviously it was probably taught to you at home, or did they actually teach you at school as well?
I grew up with like my dad's side of the family, who was all Panamanian, so I was brought up with surrounded speaking Spanish, and then I would go to school and actually speak English. So it was kind of like backwards, I basically I kind of picked up English second. When I was such a little kid, I mean, you wouldn't. I guess that would explain why. And I probably for the first half of my life, a lot of my friends were American. So
okay.
I pretty much grew up American in Panama.
I guess you probably didn't anticipate we'd be talking about this during the interview, but the reason I'm bringing it up, just to let you know, Evan, is I was quite interested. I was reading the press release your publicist sent me. I was reading up on it. I understand that you guys have released over 100 songs, or like 6 albums, and it was saying in there, but you also recorded one album that was all Spanish, and that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was. I mean, one thing I could explain also is that I grew up listening full on, like Metallica, Guns N' Roses were like my first big crushes. I mean, I always listened to American metal and stuff, so that was always kind of what I aspired to be. I mean, I was exposed to rock en español.
Yeah.
But I've always been, I've always sung in English. That was kind of my passion and everything. So that's how I write. I mean, I write, everything that way first, really. So,
okay.
But I've always wanted to do the Spanish album, and so that was that record, which came out a couple years ago. It's called El Motivo, and then also, actually, on this new record for Illuminator, we have a couple songs in Spanish as well, including the single, which has gone out to radio in Latin America. So you can actually, it's not actually released officially yet, but we do have a couple songs from this record in Spanish available right now as well.
And now let me ask you, how has that gone over like with American fans? The reason I ask is, do you ever get people kind of confused, like, oh, is this a Spanish band? Is this, what's going on here?
I think people have, it's kind of been a bit of a novelty.
Yeah. I would think so.
Bands. I mean, we're playing with El Nino this weekend, actually. El Nino, I guess you would say, is more of a kind of Latino band. Probably has embraced a little bit more of the Latin sound more than we have. I mean, if you listen to Cage9, you're never going to probably say, oh yeah, there's definitely a Latino in the band.
Yeah.
But so we kind of don't really wear it on our sleeve. It's kind of like something that if you look into the band's history, you'll kind of learn more about, but it's not really something I've really incorporated much into the sound. I mean, I'm sure everyone, as a musician, as an artist, you always bring an element of your upbringing and the way you see the world into your music and to your lyrics and everything. But
I definitely think
Latin sound in our
I definitely think that's a great thing. I mean, definitely be proud of where you came from, as they say, and if anything, it gets people talking. I mean, if I was to pick up an album that had half majority English speaking, and then they had a couple of Spanish tracks, I'd be like, oh, this is interesting. What's this? It get me at least talking, or at least to check it out.
Sure.
And so now
I'm super. Actually, funny you mentioned that. Like the Spanish versions of the songs that we have finished for this record, I love. Like, actually, like when I go to sing them in English, like in the back of my mind, I'm like singing them in Spanish. You know?
Yeah.
They kind of they flow totally different. You know, actually, we translated them kind of loosely, but it's kind of totally gives it a different vibe, obviously. So
and I was curious. Here in the U.S., have you ever like performed any of these Spanish version songs? The reason I ask is because you must get this oftentimes, like when you go to different countries and stuff. People can't even speak a word of English, but they're humming along every word of a song, and that's got to be kind of an interesting thing. And then it got to also be kind of an interesting feeling when you're up there singing in America, singing these Spanish songs, and you got, I'm sure, at least half the audience that can speak Spanish singing right along. That's got to be a cool feeling too.
Yeah, no, it's people definitely like when we've done plenty of shows, not so much lately, but we went through a period where we were doing actually just Spanish rock shows where we would only play in Spanish, and that was really cool. But funny enough, like the people, the Latinos in America actually don't really listen to rock music as much, so the market is actually pretty small. So they're kind of more into like the reggaeton and all that stuff. So kind of like a band like us, like a heavier band, singing in Spanish didn't really have like a huge draw, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Now let me ask you. At the same time, though, I would think that might open you up to the ability to play with, different types of bands. Even a lot of other metal bands, they wouldn't be able to play with some of these Spanish type bands that you guys might be able to fit in. That's got to be a neat thing too, to kind of have that extra thing to go to. Now, I wanted to ask you, Evan, about the band's name, Cage9, because obviously there's a well-known metal band fronted by Sean Peck out of San Diego called Cage, and I was kind of curious how you guys came up with Cage9.
Cage9 was kind of when we put it together. The idea was we had put out like an album, and it had gotten like some fans online, like in Germany, and so we kind of, I don't know, for some reason it like caught in our heads that it was like 9 as the word no in German.
Oh, okay.
Like no cage, like we were not in a cage.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. And now you were mentioning earlier being influenced by bands like Metallica and Megadeth, and I was interested in asking Metallica for years, they never released a music video. Like if you listen to the first 3 albums, they're really a lot heavier. So as a Metallica fan, how did you feel like when you heard the Black album? Were you like all into it, or were you kind of like, oh man, these guys are going commercial, they sold out? What was your feeling on that?
Oh, I was super pumped. That was like my formative years, and to me that was Metallica. I think my first really big, exciting album was And Justice for All, but I was pumped about that. I'm a super fan of the melody.
Yeah.
So I was happy to see them, doing stuff that can, that you can sing along to also. So some of their better work, from those years, I don't think they've really been able to connect the dots quite as well over the years. But
that's everybody. When you talk about Metallica, for the most part, that's everybody's pretty much go-to album, and what I just loved about it is I thought it was their best stuff as far as songwriting. I thought they really the songwriting was really stepped up a notch, and the other thing with it is it's great to be able to write heavy songs and 9-minute songs, but when you're doing it just to write 9-minute songs, there's something to be said for that. And if you just go in and kind of write stuff from your heart and stuff like that comes out, then there's nothing really pretentious about it. That's just it's great songwriting to me.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. At the end of the day, even like people like to, as far as the metal genre, you would probably put Pantera at the top of the heap.
Yeah.
And really, what did Pantera do but write like pop songs that were like super, aggressive? Essentially, Far Beyond Driven and all those albums were actually their structure was, you could say, verse chorus. And had stuff that was catchy. As heavy as it was like catchy.
People talk about Pantera. Even people will be surprised to learn, like if you go and check out like especially their very first album, the first 2 albums, there was almost a glam element to what they were doing, and then after
totally.
Phil Anselmo came in, they really heavied it up. But now I got to ask you, obviously being signed to this new label, EMP, David Ellefson's label, and being a Megadeth fan, that's got to be a great opportunity to be on this label. How did you guys actually hook up with him?
I'm friends with Tom Hazard, which is the A&R guy for Dave Ellefson, and back around Christmas time, we had kind of been, actually we were about to put this album out in October, I think, on our own.
Wow.
And I kind of sent it around to a bunch of, friends, and we were literally about to hit return on, CD Baby or whatever. And I got a call from him, and he was like, dude, I just showed, because I think I had passed it to him in the previous weeks, and he had showed it to David Ellefson, who he had just started working with, and apparently super pumped about that song, Everything You Love Will Someday Die,
wow,
which I think is definitely a song that he would super understand. So I was actually, to me, kind of it made a lot of sense. He would understand that song, and then he would, kind of be on board. And it sounded like there was really good energy and just excitement coming from their end. So, and who would say no to Dave Ellefson?
And I think the great thing about being signed to a label like that is, the guy that owns the label is not just another guy in a suit that knows nothing about what it takes to make it as a musician or what life on the road is like. You got a guy that's actually been through it, and I think to have a guy who's an actual musician running the label is a great thing, as opposed to just another guy in a suit who says, you know what, I don't hear anything commercial. Go write me something. I don't hear a single. Go write me something more commercial.
Right. Yeah. No. Obviously, it's a great honor to basically be involved with somebody like that, and to kind of have his ear. Like I could send in an email and say, hey, what do you think of this idea of doing this or that? So. And all things new. So we've kind of just begun them, and the album just came out 2 weeks ago. So we're kind of just beginning our journey, and super excited. Actually, we're about to probably make a pretty big announcement in the next few days regarding some late summer touring with a really cool artist.
Oh, cool! I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah. And actually, this weekend we're playing with Happy Alexandria and El Nino and Lola Flex and a bunch of cool bands. So we got a bunch of cool stuff. Kind of just beginning to fire up now, and hopefully we're about to get busy.
We'll definitely be following you on all your guys' site to keep up to date with that. Now, I can't let you go, of course, without asking about the song. You were mentioning Everything You Love Will Someday Die, and I understand that's kind of a personal song you wrote about your father's cancer battle, and you recently lost him, and so I got to ask, what's it like to write a song about, that's so personal? And I was reading where, like you're saying, that's one of the first songs that, Dave Ellefson really took notice of. I mean, to write such a personal song and have so many people, really, take notice of it.
It's epic, it's really good and it's really bad, I mean, I think the first moment I kind of remember some of the concept and ideas for it was sitting, in a hospital, and so it's kind of got a lot of baggage, obviously, and I think forever and ever more from this day forth, I'll always kind of associate this song with this time in my life, with my dad, with everything I've been through over the past year and a half. So it's super bittersweet. I mean,
it's one of those things like you're saying.
I've heard it a million times.
Yeah.
I don't get sick of hearing it, but it's got this desperate darkness to it that will never go away, and at the same time, it's got the hopefulness, that we're kind of all in this big story together, and we gotta, as corny as it is, you gotta live every day like it's your last. And
it's one of those things, like, as great as as much as people love the song, it's one of those songs you wish you'd never had to write, because then you'd still have your dad, but it's just that's what I was talking about. Earlier, you could have a band with 4 or 5 great looking guys, but if you don't have any songs, and songs are just really simple, there's no story, you're not going to go very far. And I love guys that can write songs like this, talk about things they personally gone through in life, sad things, happy things, whatever the case may be. But
sure.
That's when some of the best songs are written, I feel.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you're trying to kind of connect to something bigger than yourself when you're writing a song. You're trying to connect to, kind of on a subconscious level, to something that really kind of speaks was just texting me, "Hey, don't we have like 3 albums worth of music right here?" I'm like,
yeah.
But I think we put out the best stuff. But it did take like 40, 50 tracks of not so good stuff to kind of weed through, and because you have so many emotions, you have so many ideas, and everything is valid in its own way. But there's definitely a point where you could put your finger on something and say that's really making sense. That's really connecting with me, connecting with music. It's connecting with what I think we're trying to do as far as a band.
Yeah. Wow. So now let me ask you, being that you guys were formed and started in Panama, how long have you been here in Los Angeles?
Gosh, like 12 years.
Oh, okay.
And the whole band moved up together. Actually, it was a trio and my girlfriend who continues to manage the band to this day. So we we lived in a small, tiny Central American country, and we just felt like we had to give it a shot. We had to come to the States and try.
And you guys, I guess, just felt like you had a better chance to make it here. But what was that like? The move from Panama to LA. I mean, was it much of a culture shock, or did things change for you drastically? Or
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a super big culture shock. I mean, there's still like holes in the wall where I think I put my fist through a couple times. It was rough, I mean, I actually feel bad for everyone who I was around in those first few years. I was probably a horrible person to be around. It's just rough, I mean, anytime you like completely change your environment.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a shock, but it was also super exciting, and created some amazing memories of meeting all these bands and people, and new influences, and getting to play in all these new places. And I mean, it's been a fun ride, for sure. Yeah,
and the other thing I'd ask you about, because again, I was reading up on the band and you in this press release the publicist sent me, and I was reading here that when you guys were back in Panama, especially when you were growing up, you didn't get a chance to see a lot of your favorite bands, like we're saying Metallica, Pantera, Megadeth, play live in your country. So did you get a chance to see many live performances when you were growing up, or?
No, not at all.
Wow.
Not at all, and I mean, we'd have like MTV and stuff. This is like just free like internet, so
yeah.
And of course, you didn't on MTV. You weren't seeing like live stuff. You were just seeing videos. So it was kind of weird. Like I had my best friend's dad play guitar and he played in the band and stuff, but they were kind of like just a small town cover band kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was about as much as we would be exposed to, and
wow.
That was obviously another huge culture shock coming here. Oh my God, we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
So it was probably a good and bad thing. I think it has taken Cage9.
Well, again, that's why I ask. I mean, people who grew up here in the States like myself, might take stuff for granted. But you could go, see any live band, almost 5 days a week, and in your local town, and people take that stuff for granted. Now, talk about like even just getting your music. Did they at least have record stores where you go, get the latest Megadeth CD or whatever, or did you?
Yeah, actually, there was a couple good local record stores, and there was.
So you could at least do that.
Go on the military base and buy CDs and stuff. So I can pretty much kind of keep on top of what was going on. So I could definitely hear all that stuff. It was just actually seeing the actual live, incarnation of all these things. That was completely foreign to us. I had no idea
what
it was like. I mean, I think kind of towards my later teenage years, I started playing guitar when I was 14. So a couple years later, I was able to come to the States and see shows. My mom's parents live up in Pennsylvania, so we go every other summer, and I think I got to see I got to go Warped Tour and Ozfest, that kind of thing. So
wow. But let me ask you, the first time you got to see an actual band live in concert, I guess after you came here to the U.S., I mean, the very first show you seen, that must have been quite an experience.
Yeah, I pretty much wanted to stop playing right away.
Yeah.
I realized I had no idea what I was doing, and I was not worthy to be holding a guitar.
No, that's not the point. I mean, like I said, we take it for granted that here in the United States, any day of the week, we could go, we could go down to Hollywood or wherever and catch some band playing live. But I imagine the first time you came here to the U.S. and you seen your favorite band live for the very first time, that must have been quite quite an experience to remember.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, for sure. it completely changed the way I look at music, because obviously if you've just been listening to it and not really seen it performed, like on that level, And I kind of suspect that is kind of part of the way I look at things now, though, too. Like when I started playing music, I wasn't exactly, my end game wasn't like, oh, I want to be a big rock star up on the stage. I was kind of like, I really enjoyed playing my guitar, love making music.
Yeah.
And kind of the visual part of it happened later. I was like, oh crap, we gotta like perform this like a certain. That was like sort of the big news flash, was like, oh, perform this like awesomely, and so for me, kind of my genesis was more about making music and making stuff that was, fulfilling musically before I was trying to be awesome,
Yeah, well, you may not you may not see it, but I mean, the fact that you got your hero Dave Ellefson, he's got this label, and he was so willing to sign you guys. I mean, he definitely sees that. You and the band as a whole have got some great level of talent there, and let me ask you, like, as far as your fan base building, how much has that increased just since it was announced that you were going to be signed to the label?
You know what? Not a whole lot yet, but I mean, there's been a huge spike in terms of interest and people talking about us and stuff.
That's
so I bet if you Google Cage9 right now, we definitely have a lot more action.
Oh yeah,
going on up behind.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to translate to like serious fans, people basically buy into the music, and they got to be a fan of what we're putting out. So
yeah, well,
we're going to have to earn it. So.
I mean, you must see us every day, even just going online on your Facebook page. I mean, talking a little bit about the power of the internet. I mean, you must get people messaging you from other parts of the world, not just here in Los Angeles, and it must be an amazing feeling to find out in some parts of the world your album hasn't even come out yet. You haven't even stepped foot in those countries, and yet people are checking the music out because it's available online. They can check out the video or whatever. That's got to be a great feeling that we haven't even stepped foot and played live in these countries, and people are still checking us out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely like that's a sentiment of the way things are now. You can pretty much be a huge fan of a band and almost not really have to see them, because you can go online and watch their YouTube, live shows, and you obviously you can pretty much hear anything and everything you want to know about them personally or anything. So that's really cool. But I always like to say that the proof is sort of in the live show.
Oh yeah.
You can you can hear all this stuff, but until you see them live, you really don't fully take in what they're about.
Yeah, and the last thing I kind of wanted to touch base with you on, Evan, is you're talking about early on in your career you didn't think much about the visual aspect. It was just about going to the studio and creating music. Now, as far as visual aspect, like music videos, kind of important these days, still a little bit. And you guys produced a great video for the song "Everything You Love." Well, you'll someday lose. But talk a little bit about the video. I mean, were you really involved with the storyboard for that, or did you have a director come in and create the story?
No, we did do that ourselves. We kind of were inspired by earlier in the year. We made our first video with the song Illuminator, which is on this album as well, and it was kind of a shot in the dark, because both me and the bass player have just like nice DSLR Canon cameras that you can shoot pretty good looking video on. So we were a little strapped for cash in terms of wanting to make a video but not having the money to pay somebody to make it. Let's give it a shot, because I do like all the productions for the music and everything. I do Pro Tools, and I'm kind of a producer outside of that. So I was like, well, making a video can't be that different from making a record. So we kind of took a shot,
Because I gotta really tip my hat to you guys, because checking out the video, just for you call today, I was pretty impressed with what I saw, and it looks like a pretty pro shot video to me. I mean, you'd never know that it wasn't, and I think it's quite creative, and so again, more power to you guys, because a lot of bands these days aren't even producing music videos, and I still love music videos. And now the title track, of course, as you mentioned, is the song Illuminator, and I was curious in titling the album, why was that the track you felt that this best represents what this album is all about? Because when you're going to title your album after one of the songs, it usually is because it's something you really think really says something about the overall album.
Right. The funny thing is, Illuminator, the song itself, was not necessarily the basis of like the meaning behind that song. Kind of goes off in its own direction, but the overall big picture of it was kind of tied into what is the whole album. And we kind of decided that was kind of earlier on in the recording of the album. We hadn't even finished maybe half of the album. That was early last year that we decided to shoot that video. It was kind of like a spur of the moment thing. We're like, we've already finished a couple songs. This song has a good vibe. We hadn't even finished that song, in fact, and this is kind of part of what made the whole creative process really interesting. That song wasn't done when we shot the video for it. We actually, one day, we rented like a generator from Home Depot, went up to like the mountains outside of LA one day with like a couple girlfriends, and we shot that whole thing like in one day, just like up in some like campsite.
Wow.
And we were just kind of like, oh, let's just see how this turns out. And I ended up finishing the song kind of going with the visual that we captured that day.
Wow, how cool is that? I love that.
Kind of like putting the cart before the horse. We sort of like built the song around the video, and essentially, I think you could almost say the same about the entire album. We essentially built the album around that concept. It just kind of felt right, and as you know, it was sort of part of the heart of things I was going through with my dad and everything. So all the songs in some way tie into the vibe and the feel of that. And that's not to say that the song itself is representative of the whole album, even. It's just it kind of started the process.
I hear you. Wow, that's interesting. And now let me ask you, as far as the songwriting, are you a guy that is like the principal songwriter? I mean, that you're the singer. Does everybody contribute?
Probably most of the songs I kind of write everything, like in terms of lyrically and the melodies and stuff, myself. But I try to, everybody kind of comes into it at some point. I try to make it a full-on band project. It's not really a solo project. I try to get everybody's input on every step of the way. Essentially, I'm kind of like leading the pack. I'm like coming up with most of the ideas and stuff. But we kind of arrange it and put it together as a band. So.
And when you guys like entered the studio to start recording this album, I was curious. Did you have a ton of material already written? You kind of went through those tunes first, or was everything freshly written for this album?
It's a long, painful process. I'll say that. I mean, like I was kind of saying earlier, we probably have 40 plus songs semi-finished that could have potentially been on this album. And kind of the downside of the way I work is that in where we rehearse, I also have my Pro Tools rig, and I have all the microphones set up all the time. So pretty much everything we come up with, it's like, oh, let's record that.
Well, that's never a problem having no shortage of material. So that's a good thing, I guess. Now let me ask you, when you guys go into record, do you kind of do it the old school way where everybody's in the same room together and you record as a band, or does everybody do it the modern way, which is recording their parts separately?
We pretty much do it all separately. I will start all together and kind of lay down the ideas all together sometimes. Some of our previous albums I did actually do that way, where it was like mostly live, and then I would just come back and layer stuff.
Wow.
But this one was essentially, we'd start with the idea and just slowly create on top of it until you kind of made something that was listenable. I mean, I kind of look at it as if we put together a bunch of demos and then just polished those demos. We never like recorded a bunch of demos and then went back and re-recorded. Instead, we basically recorded those demos and just polished them until they were done, Yeah,
and I got to be real honest with you, Evan. I haven't had a chance to pick up a new album yet, but I have heard the single, and the best compliment I can give you based on just hearing that one song is a lot of times when you hear a band for the first time, you're trying to think, who do they remind me of? Who do they sound like? And I can honestly say what I really enjoy just hearing the one song so far is that you guys have a real fresh original sound. You don't I can't say, oh, they sound like Metallica, they sound like Megadeth. Those are obviously, as you mentioned, your influences, but it comes across as that you guys have a real fresh original sound. Is that something you set out to do?
Not really, and I think that's maybe the good thing is, kind of try to avoid trying, because naturally all musicians, to some extent, we're kind of like thieves. We kind of steal something from somebody.
Yeah.
And, at your core, you're obviously going to be chasing your heroes. You think you want to sound like your heroes, but I can never sound like Jim Morrison.
I hear you. Yeah.
I can't sound like, I can't sound like James Hetfield. And, when I was a little younger, I'd be like, oh man, I really wish I could sound like James Hetfield. But you sound like you do, and it's kind of for the better, I don't.
Oh yeah.
Really,
I mean, that's like I said, that's a compliment because again, if anybody checks just the single out, I can honestly say, they don't sound like another Motorhead clone band. They don't sound like another Metallica clone band, and that's not what this is. You guys just have your own sound going, and I think that's a great thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed talking to you today, Evan. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Maybe once I get a chance to hear the whole album, maybe we could then talk more specifically about the other songs. But I really enjoyed talking to you today. So all of luck to you and the band, and you have a nice day. And this interview will probably be going up sometime in between July and August. I'll be sure to let Shauna know once it goes up. But
absolutely, and actually message me. I'll send you a link to download everything. So.
Okay, that'd be great. But thanks again, my friend, and I'll be in touch. Take care.
As well, brother. Have a good one, man.
Okay, bye-bye.